Hello, welcome to the Science Room podcast. We're in the Art House as per usual. We're going to be discussing the question, will we evolve into time-travelling aliens? So with us this week we have Leanne, Emma, Dave and John. So if you could tell us a bit about yourself. So if you start with Leanne.
Hello, I'm Leanne Ncube. I'm an English teacher. I have a degree in English literature.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm an astrophysicist and I'm currently studying for my PhD at the University of Southampton.
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm a research technician at the University of Southampton, using stem cells to study diseases that cause blindness.
I'm John Lapage. I'm an evolutionary and developmental biologist, studied and worked at the University of Warwick, and my PhD is in biology.
And you've probably heard me on here before, as you have John. I'm Olly, I'm a physicist and I do all sorts of crazy science things. So anyway, to get us rolling, we did a poll, or a quick small poll on Facebook, to see what people thought would be an appropriate answer to this question. So the top answer, or the top two answers actually, were we're already time-travelling aliens with five votes apiece. No, this would break science. The other one was, how did you find me out? So there seems to be a few aliens that have been hiding in plain view all along. The next most popular with 4 votes was, no, this would break science. And then joint losers were, yes, it's a matter of time with 3 votes, and I'm not saying aliens, but aliens, in the style of Ancient Aliens, also with 3 votes. So I think the most popular sort of depiction of this was probably in Interstellar, the other film that begins with I and has lots of after stuff in it. So what would people, so from your point of view, John, what do you think the odds of being able to evolve into something completely different, what do you think the odds of that are?
That's the definition of evolution. We're definitely going to do that to some degree, depending on what we do. Even if we stay looking exactly the same, like a coelacanth did, we would still be evolving, even if we don't change our shape.
What is a coelacanth?
A coelacanth is a fish that was believed to be extinct and then was found again in a lake in Africa. And it's an ancestor of all animals with lungs, basically. But the point being that people regarded it as a living fossil, I say in air quotes, because it hadn't appeared to change over that time, when in fact the idea of living fossils kind of just focuses on the shape of them and not on the genetics and on the other features that might not be preserved in fossils. So we are evolving, we are going to evolve, though not necessarily into time-travelling aliens.
Right, so from a physical point of view, Emma, what are the sort of mechanics we need to be able to travel in time? So if we can get that nailed down, we can see how we can push ourselves that direction.
Yes, so to travel in time, you essentially need to travel faster than the speed of light. And the laws of physics say that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light in our universe. And the reason why we need to travel faster than light is because it will take us out of the world or the universe that we currently exist in and experience, which is time-like, and with that we can move around in space in multi-dimensions, but time only passes in one direction. If we travel faster than light, then we actually end up into the space-like version of our universe, and nobody really knows what this means. You could take it that we could only move in one direction in space, but multiple directions in time. And if you've seen Interstellar, there's a point where they're kind of stuck in the same place in space. No spoilers, sorry, but they're behind a bookcase. But actually they can travel anywhere in time. And so I think they're playing on that idea of what a space-like universe might be like.
Sounds exciting.
I'll book my holiday there then, see if we can arrange a cheeky cruise to this space-like universe. So we know what time travel is then. So how could the body kind of evolve to be able to leak into this extra dimensional world or something?
Well, to travel faster than light, you need to have an infinite amount of energy. So this is why I take the stance of no, it would break science. Your body would need to evolve in a way that it could resist or be able to travel faster than light without disintegrating, because there's friction and all other kinds of things to experience that your body would experience. The only other way that it might be able to be done is through wormholes, where space itself has been folded, so you can kind of make shortcuts. But even this is a bit ambiguous as to whether it's possible.
Can I ask the group what they think of the question? Does this question mean, are the little green men from various drunk people's memories humans from the future? Is that what this question means? Is it like the Roswell alien? Is that a human that came back in time? Is this what we're asking here?
I think kind of. So if people can evolve, and well, they can, and if you were to go far enough into the future, you might find that people do look different. And so if they came back, they might even speak differently too. Even they might be alien in terms of, even if they didn't look different, how they are or who they are would be different, and how they interact with the different society that they find in the past would be vastly different. The language might change, customs, the way people live might change. So even ideas about what's acceptable would be different, so they'd be alien in terms of that too.
True. I wonder if is the idea of another group of life forms evolving to look 2 legs, 2 arms, big head, 2 eyes more likely than the idea that we could ever travel in time? Because I would argue that is the case, because there's all kinds of selective pressures that defined our form. We have a head because there were advantages to evolving a head, and to having a brain because there's advantages to having all your thought process in one place rather than distributed throughout the body like in some lower animals. So it almost seems more likely to me that if we believe those aliens actually existed, that they're actually something that independently just evolved to be like us rather than something that travelled in time. Have I gone too deep? Do we need to go deeper? Oh wait, no, we're confusing Inception and Stellar again.
Let's get the mining equipment out. So essentially, we've got to come to the conclusion that time travel is probably something that, in our universe, we're probably not going to be able to actually do, let alone evolve the ability to do intrinsically. So, and the aliens we've seen are more likely just because they just happen to look like us.
Seen.
Yeah. You can't do air quotes on a podcast.
I know. I'm seen.
Can we put a link to ancient aliens at the bottom to basically cover all of the seen evidence?
But I think that
or evidence in air quotes. But
I think you raise an interesting point about the social things, because is our society going to evolve to such a point that we both think it's ethical to travel back in time and mess with other being our past selves, and think that the best thing we could do is abduct drunk people and take the area around the anus of cows and stuff, which is another famous alien thing.
There might be a shortage of cow anuses in the future. You don't know.
Oh God, is this an alien fetish?
It'd be back to the Futurama thing where they abduct taking humans' noses because they need human horn for something.
On the evolution side of things, I'd like to know about how convergent evolution plays a role in this. Because maybe we can only ultimately evolve to a certain point if our environmental conditions don't change. But I know even, so for example, octopuses, their eye is very similar to a human eye, although they completely evolved separately.
Yes, their eye actually forms from the skin, whereas ours forms from the nervous system, though under the control of the same gene, a gene called PAX6, which is a absolutely fascinating process. I mean, there's 2 fish, one that lives in the Arctic and one that lives in the Antarctic, and they diverged when there were no ice caps, but they evolved exactly the same gene sequence as an antifreeze protein. The argument my argument being it's because it has another protein that acts upon it, so that protein was the selective pressure. But convergent evolution is exactly the right phrase, and it's like I said about why do we have a head? Because it gives you the ability to sort of look around without moving your whole body. So whatever circumstances you evolve in, that's beneficial. Complex things can evolve more than once. Trees evolved 2 or 3 times and went completely extinct, and then another group of things became our new trees. The Angios, I'm mixing up my things, and vultures in Africa and in the Americas have evolved from two different groups of birds. So, is there something really beneficial to being an upright bipedal thing? One thing from fiction is they don't tend to have the same number of fingers, but they still have the grasp. So that is an example where there isn't a strong evolutionary pressure to keep 5.
But then there is if you go to engineering and you see the weird contraptions they've got robots trying to hold objects, it would appear that a hand is essentially the most optimum thing to be able to pick things up, because they've tried robots with just pincers and they just fumble around, and a hand is one of the few things that you can use to grab something and you're not going to go flying off the table. So the hand itself, I mean, it probably we've stumped upon it that's probably one of the best things, because for example cats and dogs, they don't have a need to grab hold of an object and manipulate it. They just a cat will just jump on the thing and just eat it. They don't have a need to carry around a stone tool with them.
But evolution isn't always optimal, and also that could be a loss that happens in is everyone using these 2 little fingers at the moment? Because we're smart enough that regardless of what the object is, we probably can just use 3 fingers.
Well, it would drastically affect the quantity of piano music you could play.
True.
So if we get away from just evolution, just as an outside concept, so if we can't evolve time travel, what would you say would be the sort of next best thing that we could evolve that would give us something like that would be a facsimile of time travel? So, for example, if we look at the Dune universe, they have this thing called spice that gives people prescience to see objects or stuff. So, some kind of like inbuilt radar or something. Is that something that would be? Well, what would be physically possible that would be useful for space travel or intersocietal travel or information dissemination?
I guess there's 2 takes you could take on this. One would be slowing down our animation so that we could embark on long journeys across the cosmos. And the other would be to focus on expanding our brains and maybe being able to communicate telepathically. That would be a good way, because then you could be in more places than one without contravening the laws of physics. I mean, I guess in a way of saying that, so you're saying we could have some kind of internal entanglement generation, so we can send entangled particles to people? More just like how radio works. If you could get your brain to work like a radio and you could send electromagnetic signals to people.
There are probably things which would be more easily achieved through technological evolution and implantation, rather than, or even bioengineering, something that bioengineering a radio transmitter and receiver.
So instead of just directly integrating these functions into a human, what about some kind of API? So we have a basic platform you can then plug technology into a human. Yeah. So you could say, I want to have a TV screen on my head. I want to have a boat on my head. Or I want to be able to talk to people.
My girlfriend has an RFID chip in her arm. She hasn't worked out what she wants to use it for yet, but
we could perhaps all link up like through Wi-Fi, have humans connected to Wi-Fi, and that could be like a global system. But I think
just before you go, we could use this. Would that eliminate the need to speak?
Maybe.
So maybe you could just and then people would just eventually lose the ability to talk. And we just link in with each other's minds.
But that wouldn't be so bad, because if you don't need to talk, then your mouth would evolve, because you don't necessarily, I don't know fully in biology, might not need a tongue. We could go on to like liquid soup food and things, but then that would provide a space for the brain to evolve further and increase in its size.
And what it can do?
Maybe.
But if you want to take
possible?
this to an extreme, you could just have the people in like a data center somewhere like computers, and they're plugged into a network, and then you've got these remote things going out, experiencing the
So
world.
no more
for them.
bodies.
Yeah, so you just have
Just-
who needs a body? Just have the body locked in the cupboard, and you could just have yourself connected to some internet
Like
system.
electronic
And then you could
consciousness.
live forever.
I mean, they will
potentially.
practically achieve this in areas of like Korea where they just sit in front of a computer all day anyway.
But you, what you said about social evolution would probably be required for that, because in order to make any kind of mass change on our intelligence, we'd have to either selectively breed people to be smarter or genetically engineer people to be smarter, which would be generally regarded as bad right now. You know, we couldn't kill off everyone who got like lower than a certain score of the SATs. That would be a hard policy to win an election on. And I'm not saying we should.
But might that not be? But if you want to see if in the context of reasonable stress in
Yeah.
the world, we might end up bringing a policy like that in to control population growth.
True. But the main evolution that we need for space travel is radiation resistance. And that is something we could evolve and might well have
Well,
to
that's
evolve.
something that people have evolved. So there's a
Yeah.
group of people who live in Iran, in the northwest corner. There's a large number of natural uranium deposits by the surface, and the people there are much more resistant to leukemias and things.
And we need that because at the moment we don't really have a way to get people to Mars without getting them horrendously irradiated. So if there was a nuclear war, for example, even a small one, you're going to select for radiation resistance in the population, which might be really good for space travel. So
What's the
So
small
you're saying
nuclear
that a potential nuclear standoff, hypothetically between two big powers with weapons, would be very, very good for us getting into space.
no,
Rapid evolution.
a few accidental explosions might be, but that would also require lots of people to die because that's how evolution works, really. So, but yeah, radiation resistance is probably the major challenge that we need to solve right now in terms of even medium distance space travel to other planets in our solar system.
So another point I'd like to discuss about time travel. I think in the Facebook poll it was, oh, we already, how did you catch me out kind of thing. There's another aspect to time travel that makes it seem unlikely, and that is if we were to be able to find a way to travel in time, we cannot travel to the future because it hasn't happened yet. But if we want to travel in the past, we could only ever travel back to the time when a time travel machine was invented.
But it's also more restricted than that, though, because if you think about, so if we as a group were to travel back in time, you could only travel back to somewhere that spoke English. So that rules out a large amount of the world because we wouldn't be able to. I don't know how everyone's up with Latin or anything, but
Yeah.
even now, if you're a stranger to a culture, you're branded as something. So, for example, in America, if you're a stranger, you're branded as being, potentially a terrorist or something. If you go back a bit further, you could be a Russian spy or a spy for the Nazis, or if you go back further, you'd be a witch. I mean, so there's a very narrow window in which you can time travel, which probably be about maybe 5 years at most before we start looking weird.
Yeah, that's true.
It's also got the same problem as teleportation, just in reverse, in that if I travel in time to right here a year ago, I'm actually in a different part of the galaxy than the planet was. So maybe there's loads of time travellers floating frozen in space, having successful travelling back in time, but completely missing their landing zone in terms of space.
Yeah, and that comes in with the fact that time and space are not independent.
No.
So it's not just travelling in time, it's being able to unite multi-directional travel in time and space. And whether we are in the time-like version of our universe or the space-like version, ultimately it would still not be possible to unite them both completely if one has a preference of dominating than the other.
If you do it most of Southampton, even if you got the right place, you're going to end up falling in the sea. It's all reclaimed land.
So is this what the asteroid belt is? It's just a load of accreted dead time travellers that are just orbiting the sun.
Maybe.
Is it possible that the future has happened but we just don't know it yet?
Well, that raises another interesting question. Do we live in a deterministic
Yeah.
universe? And if we do, then we don't have free will. It's an illusion. And that can be terrifying to some people.
Yeah.
Or the fact that we don't live in a predeterministic universe can be equally as terrifying, because things aren't happening because they're meant to. Nothing happens for a reason. It's the way how things play out.
I prefer the latter.
Yeah.
But I like playing poker, so.
But imagine if the universe was completely deterministic and we found the master equation for it. You could, well, that would first of all be determined to happen.
Yeah.
But secondly, with that knowledge, you would then be able to, make bets on elections or rig elections. You could control every aspect of the universe because you knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then, more importantly, you could also work out what you would be doing, because you could also wind forward. What am I doing at this point? Oh, I'm invading China or something.
Well, that is also the fundamental principle behind big data electoral analysis, in that on a large enough scale of data, the stochastic process has some very predictable outcomes. So you can look at ridiculous number of barely tangentially related things like the weather, and still work out some things which are going to, be feeding in the weather and what's happening in the stock market and what a current poll said and what was the Nielsen TV ratings for various shows, and predict things that are going to happen in the stock market or elections, because stochastic processes can have deterministic like outcomes, the basis of a Monte Carlo simulation, really.
So we could use historic data and use that to predict the future. So we're essentially time travelling, right? We're taking the past and using it to go into the future.
Isn't that what most scientists do?
Taking
Data and predicting
Well,
things.
that's if your experiment works. You can take data.
Oh yeah, I remember you were an engineer.
But I think that's right. Humans, because we live such short lives, history repeats itself continuously. So it makes sense that we could look at past events and predict the future in that way. I think that's totally logical.
So going back to you were saying about the problem with travelling into the future as it hasn't already happened, I guess kind of the way that I always thought of travelling into the future and time travel is just fast forwarding. So it's not that it has to be predetermined, it's that you're just going through it faster kind of thing. In which case it's still happening as however it will do or may do or can do, but you get there faster.
But essentially, we have that technology already. I mean, if you ignore the problems about how to defreeze something, if you cryogenically freeze yourself, you're essentially travelling in the future.
Yeah.
Just the problem is you can't get back.
Can I suggest a terrifying prospect of that idea? Maybe there's no such thing as the past. Maybe the present's the only thing that exists. So you can't travel to the past because it doesn't exist anymore. It's not a true dimension in the same way that if you're playing like Conway's Game of Life, that mathematical simulation, there's no rule for going back because it's not stored where you were before. So although you could take the current state of the universe and work out what happened to get to that point, that place in space and time no longer exists at all.
So
you can't
essentially, the
travel.
universe is a state machine as opposed to something which knows how it transitions between its different states.
Yeah, perhaps. That's quite worrying.
Yeah, I like that idea though. I hadn't thought of that, but it's easy for humans to think that the past does continually exist and the future doesn't exist because our brain creates memories, but you can't memorise something that hasn't happened. So maybe it's a restrictive concept from the human side.
I suddenly feel very claustrophobic.
Were you
So-
expecting to go back into the past?
No, but
because I didn't really think it existed.
So we walked with 4 dimensions. We walked out with only 3 now. So you've lost an entire dimension to sped into. So, but what about antimatter? Because there's a theory that antimatter is just matter moving backwards in time. So if it's moving backwards in time, it's got to be going somewhere. If the past doesn't exist, what's happening? Is it just getting stuck at the door and building up?
if the future doesn't exist, then where are we going?
Ah, touche.
I don't think you can say. Yeah, I think the idea that if the future doesn't exist, then the past can't exist either, or doesn't need to exist either. That's why I'm worried. But you said the right point with antimatter in that is that the where did it come from? like if it's travelling from the future, where did it come from? So the future would have to exist.
Yeah, it's just the arrow of time is reversed. Could it be that going in a different direction doesn't necessarily mean it has to take the same route? If the future has different possibilities, why can't the past? Is it that all aspect of time is playing out at once, but it's all in slightly different dimensions?
What have they been
Because
putting
with
in the water?
past, like in order to recreate the past, like all of the variables would have to be the same, right? Like exactly the same as well. Whereas the future, there's still possibilities, I guess, if you're gonna think that it's a place where we're headed to that isn't predetermined.
An amazing idea. If we could if we could make a machine that photocopies a person, everything, a complete one-to-one copy, but makes them an antimatter, that person would start traveling backwards in time. So instead of just going, I want to go to this time and day, you would just change the direction and you propagate through time. I mean, you have to make sure you don't touch anything else because you start spontaneously annihilating and disappearing. But if we were able to come up with a bubble to put you to sleep, give you some lift music or something, if we have I want to go back to last Wednesday, and you go all the way back in time and then start again. I mean, you have to kind of remove yourself from that period in time. But I mean, you can come up with laws for you're allowed to remove yourself from time if you wish so, or something.
That's a really good idea
Have
for a
like
sci-fi
wheelie bins
film.
on the corner to pop your old self in.
It's like time cop, but he's not allowed to punch anyone because he'll annihilate. So that'd be a really good.
No, but I mean, when you get back there, you just walk into the nearest annihilation uncopier and you become real again.
Could it be, so with the arrow of time, we consider our arrow forwards facing, we're going to the future. But if your arrow of time points in the other direction, the same ruling that I've just stated for our arrow would still be true. But maybe instead of being in a universe that's expanding and accelerating, you'd be in a universe that is contracting.
Really terrifying. So not only are we losing the time dimension now, but we're also in a universe that's getting smaller and smaller until we get squashed.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily be that going back in time needs to follow the same route. It's just the universe itself is closing as opposed to opening. And both can be an origin and both can be an end.
Maybe. The idea that you just mentioned, though, comes back to your idea about the receiver, because, of course, you'd only be able to travel back as far as your own lifespan, because let's presume that this antimatter person's still aging.
Yeah.
So they're sat in a box waiting for it to be 1952 again, and they might die of old age before they get to their destination date. So anyone going back a long way would have to have a ridiculously long lifespan, and unless it's a suicide mission, they'd want to be going back to when they can be
reanimated.
Yeah, realised, I suppose. Or was it remattered? But
So this goes back. If we go all the way back to the beginning again, it's a rather nice segue to bring the discussion back around. If this scheme is necessary, is possible. Forget that we make it or not. If we want to do this, then we need some anti-aging abilities.
true.
So within the pod, you'd still be, even though you're going backwards, you would still be going forwards.
Yeah, because as far as you're concerned, the time is still going forwards, right?
It's like driving down a motorway. If I'm driving north up the M6, and then so that's forwards in time. If I then want to go backwards, I just go onto the other carriageway. I'm still driving forwards, but I'm going the other direction.
You need a lot of antimatter food as well.
Or antimatter duty free.
Yeah.
In the process, you could get things without duty going in one direction, can't the other.
How do you tax food that's going back in time? That's the question.
You get given money when you come into the border. Yeah, here's the tax we took off of you when you went in.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that kind of brings it all round to a close. So I think we've comprehensively debunked that we're going to be able to inherently just be able to go backwards in time, and that any real mechanism for going through time is probably not going to pan out. So short of coming up with mega oil of Olay that will keep you supple and youthful until we are well past your sell-by date, there's not much we can really do.
No.
That's a lovely way to end the conversation.
Yeah.
So anyway, you've been listening to the Science Room with Leanne, Emma, Dave, John, and me, Ollie, and we'll see you next time.